Hi, welcome to Birthing at Home, a podcast. I'm Elsie, your host. I'm a homebirth mum of 2 little boys, I'm a mental health nurse, a homebirth advocate broadly, but also more specifically in the state of Victoria, and I'm an ex-student midwife. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people who are the traditional custodians of the land I'm recording on in Melbourne, Australia. I would also like to acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have been birthing at home on country for tens of thousands of years prior to the British invasion and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. Episode 25 is shared by Jordan and her husband, Ryan, from the Hunter Valley in New South Wales. Jordan is a midwife and first-time mum to baby Leo. Jordan and Ryan share their stories about finding homebirth as a midwife within the medical maternity system, overcoming those pesky untrialed pelvises, and how valuable continuity of care is from early pregnancy and for working through fears that partners or support people may have. Jordan also shares how she experienced cervical shock in the moments after birthing Leo. This is a fantastic story. Make sure you also check out the episode title on the birthingathome_apodcast Instagram to see the beautiful, beautiful photos. Welcome, Jordan and Ryan, to Birthing at Home, a podcast.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for joining me, blackouts and breastfeeding and all. Do you want to start off by giving a little background about where you guys are, what you guys do when you're not otherwise parenting and stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, I'm Jordan. I'm 26 years old. We're both living in the Hunter Valley area. And we've been married for a year and a half now, going on 2 years in April this year.
Yeah, cool.
I am a nurse and a midwife, mainly working as a midwife now.
Yeah.
For the last nearly 3 years, and I've been a nurse for 7 years.
Yeah.
Ryan?
Ryan. I'm a maintenance leading hand, and that's pretty much it.
That's it, yeah. Cool.
First baby in October.
What was that, sorry?
We've just had our first baby in October.
First baby in October. And what's baby's name?
His name's Leo.
Leo.
Sitting here watching the screen.
Pardon?
He's sitting here watching the screen at the moment.
Yes. It becomes very interesting for them, absolutely. I guess I want to start by asking, Jordan, before you started nursing and midwifery, so did you do a dual degree somewhere?
No, I did nursing through TAFE first, and then I become a registered nurse through uni, and pretty much went into midwifery as a postgraduate degree after that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And so before, going on that journey, or before even starting midwifery, even when you were just nursing, did you know anything about home birth?
I've been trying to think. I don't think I really did, no.
Yeah. And what about you, Ryan? Did you know what home birth was?
No, not really. Jordan sort of told me a lot about it and introduced me to it.
Yeah. Were you allowed, Jordan, to attend home births with your midwifery pracs?
No, there was never any kind of opportunity to do that. I think you can look into it, but it's definitely not introduced as part of the curriculum or anything.
Yeah. Do you remember, when you became pregnant, how you ended up, considering home birth?
It was way before I got pregnant. It was
cool.
Actually probably, I would say basically as soon as I started as a midwife, as a student midwife, I was just seeing lots of things and intervention, and I think I remember one day, like, a couple of the midwives talking at the desk about a midwife who had gone into private practice.
Okay.
And they were discussing home birth and, there's a lot of people in the system that don't agree with home birth, so they were making some of those comments. And I think that's kind of what made me think about it, and just seeing all the intervention, I was like, I do not want this for myself.
Yeah.
So that's kind of when I started looking into it. And I remember even making a comment in the tea room once, like, oh, yeah, I'd home birth for sure. And I just remember getting, like, looks and comments. And, yeah, it's definitely not something that many people agree with in the system, I don't think.
Yeah, that's so, bizarre. Do, those strange looks and those criticisms, like, working in that environment yourself, like, can you think of, reasons that midwives, working in hospitals give, the criticisms of home birth?
I think they just, well, for me, like, seeing intervention made me not want that for myself, whereas I think, like, a lot of people in the system see intervention and maybe think that it's saved those women, whereas, like, I'm on the side where I see intervention as the reason for things going wrong.
Yeah, the reason to be needing to be safe, basically.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, people just don't think it's safe, or, the comments of, like, oh, maybe I'd do it as, like, my second time around, but not my first time. And people definitely made comments like that. Like, I remember one midwife said to another midwife, oh, would you home birth? And she was like, yeah. And then the other midwife was like, oh, really? And she was like, oh, no, fuck that. I've got an untrialed pelvis.
A what?
Yeah, an untrialed pelvis. So pretty much saying because she hasn't given birth yet that birthing at home would 100% not be safe.
What? An untrialed pelvis? What the heck? What a bizarre thing to say. I do know that is a a misconception about birth and home birth, is that, as if, like, your first birth is going to be any indication of what subsequent births are going to be, when really, like
a trial one.
Yeah, like, it's a trial. Like, oh, if it goes well, then that's not logical at all.
Basically, like, from the moment I started, like, working as a midwife, like a student midwife, and seeing all that stuff, I was just definitely like, not coming here.
I, like you said, that you've listened to lots of the episodes, so you know that I was also once a student midwife, and my reasoning is very, very similar to yours. And I think maybe as a student, because you're often more an observer, maybe you notice that stuff more than, like, midwives are actually, in amongst it and kind of just, like, this is their day-to-day thing.
I don't think that really ever left me either, like that whole, like, seeing stuff and questioning it, and
And so when you found out you were pregnant with Leo, was it, like, always going to be a home birth? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I, like, peed on a stick and rang a midwife the next day.
That's amazing. Do you want to talk us through, like, the pregnancy journey with Leo then?
Yeah, it was probably the most straightforward pregnancy. It did take about 10 months to fall pregnant, which, like, I know is nothing compared to some people, but I'd always, like, wanted a baby, so it did feel like a lot of time for me. And I was, like, super healthy, like, taking vitamins, seeing a naturopath, like, exercising, knew lots about my body. I'd got my Mirena taken out, like, probably 6 or so months before, but my cycles were just super irregular, like anywhere from 28 days to 45.
Wow.
And I suspected that I wasn't, like, ovulating at certain times. So we did see a fertility specialist, and I was on like an induction medication.
Yeah.
And I had my tubes flushed.
Okay.
So we started trying for him the April after our wedding, and then in the November I had my tubes flushed and started on the fertility medication, and the first cycle didn't succeed, but the next one we fell pregnant with him.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So
And did you, like conceiving, under that kind of, I guess, perhaps pressure, that like it's already difficult to fall pregnant, like you don't want to lose this pregnancy. Did those fears ever like come to mind, choosing to home birth? Because I guess personally, I have luckily not had to experience any of that, but I can imagine that, women that go through fertility difficulties, like then like the almost fixation of like this baby needs to survive, I need to be able to be holding my baby, might influence, where and how they choose to birth. Did you have any thoughts about that?
No, definitely not. Like I did have those fears around like losing the pregnancy, definitely, but it never crossed my mind that like birthing at home would ever be unsafe for us or him.
Yeah. And so you've rung the midwife like the day after peeing on a stick.
Yeah.
Ryan, what were your thoughts at this point? Like I guess, finally Jordan's pregnant, and then she's like, oh, I want to have a home birth. Like, had she already kind of like prepped you for that pathway, or?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. We definitely talked about it a lot, but I did sort of had I had my questions about it because it was a
alternative.
Yeah, it's like an alternate thing. It's like it's a new. Well, to me anyway, you just assume you get pregnant, you go to hospital, but once you sort of learn more and more about it, the home birth option, it sounds really good, and it's
yeah.
I was always sending like videos and showing you stuff on Instagram, and I'd tell him about like the intervention that I was seeing at hospital and stuff too.
Yeah, I think it was hearing the stories of what goes on at hospital too doesn't sort of wasn't sort of glorifying it for me either. So
yeah, absolutely.
That was good.
Yeah. What, if you remember, were some fears that you had, Ryan, about home birth, like from a dad partner perspective?
Well, I guess because I don't really know like a lot about it, or sort of like I kind of know now, having had Leo, but going into it just sort of not knowing anything, you have these fears, but you're not really sure. It's kind of unknown.
Yeah.
And I think just the meetings with our midwife and talking to her was like one of the best things for like just sort of squashing them fears.
Yeah.
Any sort of questions I had, I could just ask her, and we all talked about it, and and fix that up.
Yeah. I've heard that a few times actually, that like partners talking to their like the private midwife has really, really helped. Do you remember, Jordan, like when you first actually met with your midwife?
I think it was like 8 weeks, which is like stark contrast to the care you get in the hospital. You usually don't get seen until at least after you've had like your 12-week scan or something.
Yeah.
But like we had a discussion on the phone, and like it wasn't even all about like what's going to happen. It was like, nourish yourself, get through the first trimester, like eating all these foods. And I guess too, because like I was a midwife, it probably was a different conversation to what some other people would have. But, yeah, it was just like chatting with like someone you knew immediately.
Yeah, yeah. I've actually seen posts on, I don't know, Facebook or Instagram or whatever about women not even getting their first appointment. Like maybe they have like telehealth consults or something, but they don't actually physically face-to-face meet someone until like 20 weeks or something.
Crazy.
I think that's, so crazy.
Yeah.
And
the first trimester, like, it's hard. Even though, like, for me, like, I had one day of morning sickness and that was pretty bad. And then, you know, I had the occasional nausea if I didn't eat, but I never vomited. So, like, physically I was fine, but I had some bleeding around, like, 7 weeks.
Yeah.
Which, like, there was no reason for it either. I got a dating scan and it didn't show any kind of hematoma or anything. But my midwife, she was very reassuring about that. And she actually, when she did do a visit, she offered to do a speculum to check, like, if there was anything she could see. And my cervix did have, like, a little bit of, like, it looked like shedding, which was probably where the bleeding was coming from. But, yeah, like what I was trying to say is, like, it was so good to have someone that you knew you were going to have throughout, reassuring, you know, with any questions or just kind of being there for you.
Yeah. And, it's also, like, a part of the process of building trust in a person because, like, that's so essential.
Yeah, and I think that's probably, like, a massive part of private midwives and home birth is, like, you've got that ability to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anything in particular that you declined or had challenges with, like, during your pregnancy with Leo?
I didn't do the glucose test.
Yep.
Basically because, like, just from the research that I'd done, it's not a very good way of actually, like, testing for those kind of things.
Yeah.
Because I would never eat 75 grams of glucose and then be fasted and expect my body to tolerate that.
Yeah, 100%.
And, like, I'd listen to lots of podcasts by, like, the Midwives Cauldron and things like that, which kind of explained how it wasn't very, good way of doing it.
Yeah.
And I didn't do the GBS testing again because that's, very non-evidence-based.
Yeah.
What else? I think I put something down. And part of, like, having a private midwife is you can have the option of, like, attending your local hospital to do, like, a booking in appointment.
Yeah.
And I declined to do that because it would be where I was working.
Oh,
I kind of didn't, like, want my information in a place where people could look at it. Not that I'm, like, saying people would, you know, be out there doing, but I didn't feel it necessary to do that because in the event that I did have to transfer, like, they have to assume care of you anyway, and my midwife would be going with all the notes and know me, like, to a T anyway. So I didn't find that necessary, and I just kind of, she was more than happy. She actually agreed that she didn't find it that necessary, and she'd home birthed herself and didn't do it for herself either, so... Yeah.
And I guess that's the thing about an emergency is that, like, hospitals are set up for emergencies. Yeah. So, like, if there's an emergency, don't you worry. The hospital will be there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you do, like, any, you know, obviously you're a midwife, so you know, like, so much already, but did you or Ryan, like, do any kind of education, like formal education stuff?
Yeah, definitely. And, like, as you say, I'm a midwife, but I'd never been a pregnant woman before, and I kind of wanted to separate myself from that. So I dove in, like, real deep with education. We did hypnobirthing together, like a face-to-face one over 2 weekends. I was always listening to podcasts and like made sure I was listening to positive ones, just for that mindset. And listening to I found the Great Birth Rebellion really good, and I would send Ryan ones from that, and we listened to a few in the car together.
Yeah.
Did you do any other one?
The hypnobirthing sort of course that we did.
Yeah, it was really good.
That was really good for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
One with like a book that's got like a cheat sheet in it, and Ryan would write down things and
Yeah. When you told, friends or colleagues or family that you were planning to have a home birth, did you get, obviously you said about your colleagues, but you as well, Ryan, I mean, I understand you're not just sitting around chatting about home birth all day, but did you receive any weird comments or really supportive comments about it?
I was always really open that I was going to home birth even before we were pregnant. I definitely didn't hold back, and I think that people knew I had this very strong desire to do it, and I'd done my research, and I guess kind of being a midwife too, I had my reasons. So I think no one really said anything to me, and I think they probably knew that if they did, I would probably take a bit of a stand.
Yeah.
Everyone I sort of told, they'd be shocked, oh really, you're gonna do it at home. You just when you do it at a hospital where it's safer, but it's not necessarily the case.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you've got this magical title of low risk. The outcomes are no better in hospital. So, but yeah, interesting. Did you have anyone, in particular, fearmonger you or
as I said, there were that whole comment that I heard at the desk about the untrialed pelvis thing. They knew I was standing there, so I don't know if that was kind of directed at me in a way. I'd hope not, but I did kind of feel sometimes people were judging, and yeah.
And when you did you do any scans with Leo?
Yeah, we did all the kind of regular ones. So we had a dating scan.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that until after I was 8 weeks, because that's kind of the recommendation. But then when I had the bit of a bleed, I kind of got in my head, and we did it a bit before 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And then we did the nuchal translucency one, paired with the NIPT, just because we wanted to find out the gender.
Yeah.
And then had the morphology scan. And then I didn't plan to do any extra medical ones. But at I think it was my 36 or 37 week home visit, my fundal height wasn't keeping up. It had always been about 2 centimetres below the gestation, which is normal. And I'm not a big person. And I always looked kind of I never really popped big, did I, Ryan? I was kind of always holding it in. So assumed that he was going to be a petite little baby. But around that 37 weeks, I think the week prior it was I don't know, 35 centimetres or something like that. And then that next week it had only gone up half a centimetre or something, and then it had fallen within the greater than or less than 3 centimetres.
Yeah.
And the recommendation, or my midwife didn't pressure me to do anything, but she said, if you want, you could have a growth scan. And I was in so many different minds about that, because I know they're so inaccurate, especially in the late gestations. But then this little part in my brain was I know these things as a midwife, fetal growth restriction, and I did get those little kind of fears
Yeah.
at that time. So I did decide to do a growth scan, but it was all well, and I think I probably just shouldn't have.
Yeah, but it's hard though because like the fact that you're even home birthing is pretty amazing because like society, you know, so much of like, you know, I guess in my experience studying midwifery, I felt like I was taught one thing, but like we'd go on placements and see a complete other. And I guess it's that complete other that you're exposed to so much that, you know, creates this like anxiety about like, what if that, what if they're this, what if they're that. So I think like, yeah, the fact that you home birth is amazing in itself. The additional thing that you had like a growth scan is like, yeah, like I think, yeah, that's a non-issue really.
Yeah. It was just kind of like it was just playing in my mind, and I think I ended up just saying, well, do it, and maybe that will reassure me a bit, and it did.
Yeah. And I guess,
I
yeah,
knew
like when you
intuitively that it was okay, but I don't know, that little part of me was just like,
Yeah. And I guess as well, like if you come across those little anxieties, it's better to deal with it in whatever way you choose to deal with it so that you're not bringing that like into like labor land or the birth space, you know? So
definitely.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Were you working like during your pregnancy, Jordan?
Yeah, I worked up until I think like 35 and a half weeks. But even like whilst I was trying to get pregnant and during pregnancy, as I said, like a lot of the intervention was like I'm such an empath, and like a lot of the stuff that happens isn't evidence based, and that really bothered me, especially in the birth space, but like as well, like in antenatally and postnatally. But I asked my boss to not be placed in the birth unit during that whole time.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it was just something that I felt like I needed to, you know, take myself away from, especially because what I was about to embark on was complete contrast to what I was seeing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And like in preparation for like going into labor, did you do anything or like
I did
do anything
heaps.
particular?
Like I did acupuncture, chiro. I was getting like pregnancy massages, and she was also a Reiki therapist.
Yeah.
And like at home, I would rarely sit on the lounge.
Yeah.
Like I was always on my exercise ball because I knew like how important it was to, you know, remain active, but like make sure your pelvis isn't kind of getting into those positions that modern day society has us in, like in the car and, you know, the seats on the lounge. So yeah, I'd always be over the ball. And then at night time, Ryan and I would do these exercises as part of the optimal maternal positioning.
Oh,
I don't know if you've ever heard of that one, but it's like it's kind of like similar to spinning rabies, which a lot of people have probably heard of. Things like side lying releases, where he'd support one of my legs and I'd like hang it over the edge of the bed.
Yeah.
It's just all about kind of getting your pelvis and those ligaments properly aligned for birth.
Yeah, I definitely did some of the optimal positioning things. I'll see if I have like any resources that my midwife shared with me, and I'll include like a link or something in the episode description.
I'd also do like a little yoga flow pretty much every morning.
Oh, yeah.
Only about 20 minutes long. It would go for about the length of one of the hypnobirthing tracks that would say like the positive affirmations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at the end of that I'd do like an inversion 3 times for a minute each.
Yeah. Were there any...
I was like all in. Like
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Were there any particular like affirmations that really stuck out to you?
Don't know. I had these really nice affirmation cards.
Yeah.
that I had spread out around the room and set up heaps, particularly when birth was about to, be a bit closer.
Yeah.
But I just like to think that, my body had made this baby, it can birth this baby. Things like, women have been doing this for so long. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And before you went into labor, like, did you have like any Braxton Hicks or things like that?
Yeah, I had Braxton Hicks probably for about 15 weeks.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
And I think a lot of it was to do with being on my feet at work a lot, probably not drinking enough water at work, bending over, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, my uterus was super active.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just like still like internally laughing about the untrained pelvis
Untrialed pelvis.
Like,
yeah.
Okay, I can just like see that that's like on a tick box somewhere, like in the future, like
my pelvis is now
risk
trialed.
factor. Yeah, untrialed. That's it. Cool. Do you want to tell the story of the birth of Leo then?
Yeah. Well, I think so. I'd been doing chiro like pretty much once a week. And I think even in the couple of weeks before, I maybe went twice a week. So Leo was born on a Friday, but on the Tuesday I'd gone to chiro, and I remember her like feeling my sacrum and my pelvis, and she described it as being floppy.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically like she had felt a shift in like that area.
Yeah.
She was kind of like, oh, I don't think it'll be long. But yeah, that day passed, and then I think Thursday come around and I went back to chiro in the morning.
Yeah.
And again, she said, yeah, like things feel super ready. And that afternoon I went for a pregnancy massage. And as I said, she was also a Reiki therapist.
Yeah.
During that massage, I was getting some cramping. And I remember she even like midway through the massage was like, are you feeling that cramping? Like I hadn't actually said that I was getting it.
Wow.
But she was like, yeah, I can like feel that too.
Wow.
I don't know, take with that what you will, but
yeah.
Anyway, and then at the end of the massage, she like had her hand on my belly and the light flickered 3 times.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that gives me chills.
I know. And she kind of just looked at me and I looked at her and she was like, that's just telling you everything's going to be okay.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was a bit crazy. I didn't really know what to think of it. Like, yeah. But yeah, anyway, so had just had my massage, and that was probably on a normal day take about 20 minutes to get to where I was.
Yeah.
But the traffic was like there was some kind of road incident, and there was like a traffic incident. I don't know, it took me like 45 minutes to get home, but I was getting like surges and they were regular. So I was like, oh my gosh, this might be the start of something.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got home. My bladder was like really full and I was always super uncomfortable in the car. So I think it was just that. Or maybe it was the start of something. Maybe it was the pressure points from the massage. Who knows? But yeah, I got home and I remember like Ryan was dirty from work and I was like, go have a shower. Like, this is the start of something. Like, you need to be ready. And
Yeah.
Yeah, but once I got home, emptied my bladder, got comfortable, it was nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, then, so that was the Thursday. The next day, Friday, woke up in the morning, got out of bed around 6 a.m. and I remember looking in the mirror and my belly was this super odd shape. It was almost like a square.
Oh.
And I've got an Instagram that I opened to start like sharing my pregnancy journey and birth, like from start to finish. So, and I've posted a photo on there, so you can link it.
Yeah.
If you want. I haven't got it public yet. So
Yeah, I think I saw it last night or something, and I was like looking before.
Yeah. So yeah, my belly was this super weird shape, and like I didn't really think much of it. All I thought was, oh, that's funny, and I took a picture of it. But on reflection, like you can picture that like Leo was like sitting in that perfect position for birth, like back down front, bum up the top.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, that was like 6 a.m. Went about my morning, had breakfast, did a bit of yoga. Around 9:30, I went to the toilet, did a wee, and then I noticed like at the end of the wee that it felt like maybe there was like a bit more fluid coming. But I was like, oh, nothing like super obvious.
Yeah.
And then I think not long after that, those like deep period like pains began.
Yeah.
Again, like because I'd had Braxton Hicks, I was like, oh, but it definitely felt different to that because it was down low. It wasn't those like at the top muscle kind of pains.
Yeah. Roughly how many weeks were you?
I was 40 and 4.
40 and 4, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they just continued from there though. I remember around probably closer to 10, I put on one of those contraction timers, and immediately it was like a few were 6 minutes apart, and then it went to about 5 minutes apart from probably, not long after 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
I just was like, oh, who knows? Like, because of yesterday, like the day before, like where I'd got those cramps, I was like, and I knew that like being a first time mum, it could just be the start of something. And throughout my whole pregnancy, I thought I was going to be 42 and plus weeks. Like I was telling myself,
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, I lied down on the couch because I was like, if this is something, it'll continue. I'm not going to, do what people do and try and get on the ball or go for a walk. I knew that if my body was ready, it would have continued.
Yeah.
And it did. I also didn't really want to provoke it because Ryan was at work and he'd taken my car for a service.
Yeah.
He was actually at work without the car.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a little bit, after 10, they'd been 5 minutes, and I went back to the toilet and noticed like a very slight pink spot like on the pad that I'd put on from earlier in the morning when I noticed that little bit of fluid after a wee.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, another sign. Maybe something is picking up. Went back to the lounge, lied down for maybe 10 or so more minutes, and they started to ramp up. I stood up off the lounge, and it wasn't like a massive gush like people see in the movies or some people have with their waters, but I definitely like noticed that it was my waters. Like I looked on my undies and there was a bit there, and as a midwife, like we kind of have this test where if it's the waters, it smells a bit funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, I sniffed it and I was like, yeah, that's got to be my waters.
Yeah.
Took a photo and sent it to my midwives. So yeah, I obviously had my my main private practicing midwife, but I also, as part of a home birth, there's 2 midwives attending.
Yeah.
And I actually asked one of my colleagues and really good friends to act as the second midwife.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So obviously was letting them know, I don't know, I was always like, look, I've had this, but I don't know, like it's probably nothing. It's probably I'm going to be in labour for 3 days. Like that's what I was telling myself.
Yeah.
And then I think I was also, back and forwards messaging with Ryan, like, oh, do you call Toyota and tell them to cancel the service? Like, but also I don't want you to rush home because who knows, like, could be nothing.
Yeah.
And they were never, like, super painful anyway. Like, it was just, like, really deep kind of pain right at the front.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Ryan got home closer to 11:30, and at that point, like, they had got to the stage where I was, like, wanting to really, like, sway my hips and breathe through them. And I think even like as soon as he got home, it was like there was a bit of a shift, and like it was like my body knew it was like ready and like okay to like continue.
Yeah, wow.
Just like that oxytocin, I suppose.
Yeah.
So he's like getting the birth pool ready, and we put up my sheet with all my little birth affirmations and little colouring ins that I'd done.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with my midwife on the phone. I think I've got like notes written down because obviously.
Yeah, no, that's great.
On my Instagram.
Yeah.
That was around 10:50. I remember it was like a 6 or 7 minute phone call, and I had 3 surges like within that space.
Yeah.
So she was like, Jordan, I'm coming. And I'm like, yeah, but, what if you're here and it takes forever? Like,
yeah.
She was driving from an hour away, and she was at, I think she was at Kmart too. So
yeah,
had to sort out her kids. But yeah, she was obviously making her way from then.
Yeah.
My friend, who was the second midwife, she was going to leave from her house, which was only about 20, 30 minutes away.
Yeah.
And I also had planned to have a birth photographer, so I'd let her know as well, but she was waiting for her husband to get home from work.
Yeah.
The surges were every 2 minutes from about 10:40. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as I said, once Ryan was home, I felt like they started to get more intense, and I wanted him to squeeze my hips.
Of course, yeah.
Hypnobirthing. And I found that really helped. So he'd be like setting up the pool, and then I'd be like, come and squeeze my hips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if, because I released my episode the other week, and I'm not sure if I mentioned, but like with my second pregnancy, we didn't redo hypnobirthing, but my student midwife, when she arrived, she was like, oh, like, do you want me to squeeze your hips? And I was like, yeah, that would be great. And so she was squeezing them, and then she was trying to teach, or I guess reteach, my husband how to do it. But I kept being like, no, you're not doing it like Chantel's doing it. Like, you've got to like do it really hard for longer.
Yeah. It's almost like you feel like you're going to break my hips, eh?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's like an arm workout for whoever's doing it. Yeah. What were your thoughts, Ryan, when all of this was happening? Like, did you feel like a bit out of your depth, or were you just like really excited, or?
I was just in a rush.
Yeah.
I was trying to get the pool full of warm water, but every couple of seconds or minutes, it felt like seconds, I was rushing back to squeeze Jordan's hips and then go back to trying to figure out how to get the lining in the pool, and just we had all lights and bits and pieces ready to go, but just needed to be set up, and only just scraped in with getting it all done.
And so during this time, Jordan, so you're like doing swing and hip squeezes and things like that. Were you using like any other particular like things that you'd learned?
So I think not long after Ryan had got home, and in between like the setting up, I had another, maybe that was the 7-minute phone call with Rihanna, or maybe she called again, my midwife. And we were kind of discussing, do I have a shower or should I put the TENS machine on? And I decided to have a shower, just because obviously once you put the TENS machine on, it's a bit of a hassle to, take that off. It can't go in the shower. I went in the shower, and I liked the heat, but our shower was quite small, so I didn't feel like I could move and like get into a comfortable position. But I remember I got down on the ground, and I was intrigued, and I tried to do like an examination on myself to see how far dilated was. And I remember it kind of felt like I was 4 or 5 centimetres. And that was only like an hour and a half, if that, from when I got the first sign of labour.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, maybe things are happening a bit quicker than I thought. And I think I just like said to Ryan, like, you know, get things ready. I'm already 5 centimetres.
Hurry up, move quicker.
But I got her out of the shower because I just didn't feel that it was a good space, like, to move around in. Because, like, I really liked standing at the end of our kitchen bench and just swaying my hips kind of in that figure 8 pattern.
Yeah, okay.
So, I got out the shower and put the TENS machine on. And I think the TENS machine, it helped, but I think I was maybe like a bit too far into the labour for it to have done something, because they say you should put it on like in early labour, whereas I think I kind of skipped that. But it was kind of a good distraction. As the surge would come on, I'd press the button. So, I had that when I was at the end of the bench. Ryan was squeezing my hips. I had a birth comb. And then another thing I really liked was a little handheld fan. The battery kept dying.
Oh, no.
So they had like an extension lead with it on charge.
Yeah. Fan with battery is not a rechargeable one.
Yeah.
And you can just quickly swap them out.
Yeah.
Pro tip.
Yeah.
And then I think around 12 o'clock, my friend midwife arrived. And me and Ryan were at the end of the bench by that point, doing all those things that I just mentioned. Around 12:20, I've wrote down I had a really big bloody show. And I saw it and I was like, oh, that's a good sign. Like, I think my midwife brain was kind of there, but it wasn't like I forgot to mention, part of my fear, I guess, was like, was I going to midwife myself heaps throughout the labour?
Yeah, of course.
So there were little things like that, but it wasn't like fear-based things that I was midwifing myself on. It was kind of more like, oh, yeah, cool, that can sometimes mean this. Yeah. And then not long after that bloody show, I had another big one after we'd changed the pad. And my friend messaged my primary midwife saying, like, this is what's happened. She was on her way and arrived probably 20 minutes later at 1 o'clock with the birth photographer as well.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, like heaps of nice photos.
Are they the photos that are on your Instagram?
Yeah, I'll start sharing those,
cute.
Yeah, but around that 1 o'clock when my primary midwife arrived, I was getting like those involuntary kind of like I felt like I needed to push to make the surges feel a little bit less in a way. So my midwife said get in the pool, and Ryan had this like pretty cool setup for the water system, because I thought that I'd like the shower and the labour was going to be heaps long. I was worried that we were going to run out of hot water. So he had like a camp kind of gas burner, camping shower set up. So that we wouldn't tap into our hot water system. It would
amazing.
From that. It took ages, like it was taking ages to fill. And I remember I kept looking up the pool and saying to Ryan, just use the normal water. Like, but I guess he was like just trying to kind of remain calm, and like also I'd said to him, it's not going to happen quick. So we've got plenty of time. It was like half full, and my midwife was like, get in. And it was immediate relief, like that hot water is so good. Yeah, definitely recommend getting in the birth pool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think I just started to become a little bit more vocal at that point. I had one of the hypnobirth tracks on repeat, and it was only like 20 minutes. It was one with the affirmations, like, I am focused on a calm, easy birth. And then it would go into the next one and the next one. And as soon as that would end, I would be like, put that back on. I just needed that like internal kind of like, I don't know, distraction, I suppose.
Yeah. Do you remember if like you were like, I guess, repeating it in
I
your
think
head?
it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. So yeah, from about 1 o'clock I was in the pool. I just constantly kept changing positions, like one leg up, like on my back, on my knees, kind of hanging like from Ryan a little bit. And yeah, I was kind of bearing down, but not like actively pushing or anything. And I didn't get the fetal ejection reflex. I definitely actively pushed. From about 2 o'clock, I think I started as like properly pushing. And like my midwife's, because I got my birth notes, like part of what my midwife does, like she gives you a copy of everything.
Yeah.
So that's another thing like you don't get in hospital.
No.
So good.
And so was your midwife and your friend kind of like, what were they doing during this time?
They were just like standing there at the pool, like light touch, like on my shoulders, just reassurance. Putting some more like bits of hot water with the kettle.
Yeah.
Just kneeling there, like being quiet, but also like if I'd asked, like, because I'm reading like those notes from my midwife, they'd wrote things like, labial parting, which can obviously represent that the baby's quite low down in the vagina.
Yeah.
I'd be like, is he coming? And they'd be like, yeah, like he's coming. Like we've got little signs. And they said, you can like check if you want. And I remember like putting my finger inside and like it was like one knuckle. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, they were just like, I don't know, like everyone was just moving around. Like I don't not remember that part, but it was just so surreal. Like the space was just, I don't know, like it was almost like I didn't know people were there. I was in my own world.
Yeah.
I don't know, Ryan, were they like, that's what they were doing. They just kind of, moving, just sitting, like watching, I suppose. There was definitely no like checking how dilated I was or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you want.
Yeah.
Just like to, I listened to another podcast, like the Birthing Instincts podcast the other day.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and they were saying like that, in the maternity system, like healthcare professionals or whatever, like people that work, even if you're not a healthcare professional, people that work in the birth space should be like lifeguards. Like, just, if something's actually happening, for sure.
Otherwise,
yeah. So I think that, that's perfect.
Yeah. So definitely, they were just observers.
Yeah.
And I just, obviously things continued to progress. Like I would put my hand there and I started to feel his head more, and I felt that really helped. Like having my hand there and like it kind of helped me feel that there was progress.
Yeah.
I think at one point we turned the affirmation playlist off and went to like proper like music that I'd made a playlist on.
Yeah.
And like the birth photographer was moving around, and even after the fact she asked if I was like affected by the flash, like had that bothered me, and I don't even remember noticing that at all.
Yeah, wow.
I was definitely like in my own little world.
Yeah. So because it was during the day, like we're talking about,
I envisioned a night birth.
Yeah.
But no, it was 9:30 labour started, and then Leo was born at 3:36, so around 6 hours.
How long roughly did the note say that you were pushing for?
It says around an hour and a half of like for pushing. And honestly, like I probably shouldn't say it, but the only thing that hurt was my butthole.
Yeah.
It wasn't like my vagina. It was literally all there. And I remember saying that to my midwife, like, oh, my God, what the hell? Like, is he coming out of there? Like, tearing there or something?
Yeah.
And she, like, held a towel, like a little cloth there for me.
Yeah.
But, everything just continued to happen really nice and slowly. And I'd done perineal massage with Ryan throughout the pregnancy. As I said, I did all the things. Like I wanted to tick them all off, because then I could say if something went one way or the other, well, I did what I could. Like,
yeah, you tried. Yeah, absolutely.
So his head come out nice and slowly, like stretched really, really slowly. I look back on the video and it was probably like 2 or 3 songs worth of just slowly crowning.
Wow.
Which did like feel intense, but it's not like people explain it. Like I didn't feel it was like that massive burning ring of fire. Like just lots of pressure, I suppose.
Yeah.
And his head was born, and his head was underwater for about a minute and a half before the next contraction come, where I birthed his body and guided him up to my chest myself.
Wow.
And he had a loop of cord. I can't fully tell if it was – I don't think it was fully around his neck. It was more like around his neck and down his shoulder, like like a sling or a scarf or something.
Yeah.
My midwife removed that. And then, it was probably only 10 seconds and he let out a massive cry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was going through, is Ryan still there?
Yeah, he's here. Leo's cooperating at the moment.
Yeah, amazing. Ryan, do you remember like what was going through your head at this moment? Because like this is the most like amazing moment ever, you know, like 1 minute like he's not there and then the next like he is born into this world. I just like, do you remember what was going through your head?
Yeah. It's pretty wild. It's nothing you've ever seen before, and it's just pure joy. Yeah, It's really amazing. Yeah, it's such a being in being in the comforts of your own home and just being in that nice environment, and then bringing something like that into the world. It was awesome. It was wild.
Yeah,
it was really good.
Yeah. But I didn't have like any fears or anything around like that part of the birth, and like he was getting his heart rate checked throughout, and it was always like perfect.
Yeah.
Even when he was like crowning for like 3 minutes with his head completely compressed, like his heart rate was always completely fine.
Yeah.
Little trooper.
Yeah. I mean, the body is like pretty amazing and babies are pretty clever.
Oh, yeah. And like when it's allowed to happen spontaneously and normally, like, it rarely ever goes wrong.
Yeah. It just happens. Yeah.
And I just remembered because I watch my birth video like all the time.
Yeah.
Like a moment where his head's out and his body wasn't birthed yet, and I was kind of like rubbing my belly, and my friend Holly, the other midwife, she was like, oh, like that's the last time he's in your belly. And I remember,
oh my God.
Yeah. And I was like, I loved being pregnant.
Yeah.
And I felt like super connected to him, and like even there was points through the pregnancy where like obviously I wanted him to be here, but like I was also like sad that would be over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like even like now, I'm not sure if you've experienced it, but like now and when I was postpartum with my first son as well, like sometimes I still like feel like I get like phantom.
Oh yeah, I've had some like of those
kicks or movements or something, and like they're in your belly for so well. I mean, it feels like so long.
Yeah.
And it, you know, you're their house.
I know.
Like,
and it's like, you know, when they're in your belly, like they don't have access to everyone else who like wants to hold and wants to pass the baby around. Like it's all yours. Like, yeah.
And I guess when they're born into the world, like that's life. And I guess, you know, in a way you kind of letting go a bit, like like metaphorically and also literally. And like that's kind of scary, you know, because like in your tummy they're safe and you've got them, and yeah, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, so I just, as he was up and like on my chest, I was just like filled with emotion straight away, and he was so alert, and like people even like comment that it's like he's been here before.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, just I suppose soaked up all of that kind of moments, and there was no like, you know, robbing of him, and the midwives, they all just kind of, everyone was crying, I think, like even the photographer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you stay in the water for the placenta?
Yeah, so I was waiting for ages actually for my placenta. It was a bit of a went a little bit, you know, not the way I hoped it would go. But yeah, I was in the pool for probably an hour and a bit, and I'd tried, like I could feel little cramps, like it was coming. The cord had gone completely limp and white.
Yeah.
I gently tried to like give it a little bit of a tug, but during one of my scans it said I had a marginal cord insertion.
Okay, yep.
Which means it's kind of just on the edge of the placenta for anyone who doesn't know. Like it's still connected to the placenta, but it's not in the centre as you'd see in like a typical placenta photo. So I was kind of just obviously aware of that, and also didn't want to like rush anything. And my midwife definitely wasn't concerned. My bleeding was normal. We tried that placenta release tincture from Blissful Herb.
Okay.
Tried that twice, and still nothing. Got up out of the pool probably at that, probably in an hour and a half mark, just to see if getting up would help. Bit of gravity, went and sat on the toilet. And then I had like a faint episode.
Wow.
So yeah, like I was holding Leo still, and I just suddenly, I didn't even really feel it come on. It just happened, and I remember like waking up, just sitting on the toilet, and then being like, Jordan, like, are you okay? And I was like, oh yeah, I was just having a dream. Like literally, like, I didn't remember what the dream was, but I was having a funny dream, but it was really quick. And as I said, like no one was like rushing around. Like it definitely wasn't like what happened wasn't what would happen in the hospital. I keep saying that to everyone when I explain this part, because I kind of feel like I need to justify myself with like how my placenta birth went. Yeah. So yeah, passed out once, and the midwife, they did call the ambulance, but I come to and I was like, no, like I'm fine. Yeah. So they cancelled that, but then I passed out a second time.
Yeah, wow.
So they were like, look, like we're not concerned, Jordan, but like we also kind of just, you know, duty of care kind of thing. We'll just call them. And I was like, that's fine, but like I don't want them coming inside.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. We ended up giving me the Syntocinon injection, which I didn't want to have, but it was kind of just, you know, that step where it was going. Again, my bleeding was normal. They tried that, and I lied down on the ground in the bathroom. They were feeding me like a Super Duper and water. Like it was so chill. My friend cannulated me, and they gave me a bag of fluids just like for dehydration, because hadn't really drank much in the pool and things had happened quite quickly. The ambos were just outside, and my midwife was just doing some traction. She did an examination like post-birth, that is, like during the placenta part, and she could feel, and like I had felt that my placenta was like sitting inside my vagina. But then anyway, ended up birthing it. Like that took more effort than the birth, I'm going to say. Like it shouldn't have, but it did. But what happened was, and they hadn't picked this up on a scan, my placenta had another lobe to it.
Oh, wow.
it was still like it was all still connected, but that part of the lobe was sitting kind of where the cervix was, and caused cervical shock. So it's like a vasoconstriction, and it causes just that vasovagal response.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
I'm just like thinking this entire time, like where you've worked, or like what is the protocol in hospitals for placenta delivery? Like if you say,
I would have been in theatre.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, number one, I don't think they're letting you go this long. And number two, I think a code blue would be called.
Yeah, 100%.
And you'd be gone.
Yeah, I keep saying, like, yes, this happened. And when it was happening and I had to have the Syntocin on, I did feel a bit like, I haven't had my physiological third stage. But like what happened was the best thing that could have happened in the way it did. Like,
yeah. But like I say it all the time, like people that home birth aren't anti-medicine.
No.
It's accepting it when it's needed. And I think that's like, I mean, you gave it a real good go.
Yes.
And I think pretty much everyone would choose the same route that, you chose to have the Syntocin on. Like, I mean, and that's the other thing about scans, like they're not accurate.
No, that's right. Like they never picked up that I had that extra load.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
It come out. My blood loss, I think they wrote down it was around 700 or 800 mils, but I wasn't like affected from the blood loss. It was just that placenta sitting there on my cervix.
Yeah.
We got up after that point. The ambos had remained outside and they left. They were actually quite happy to have been called because it was towards the end of their shift, and they were like, oh, well, we're just going to sit here just so like it rolls around to the end of their shift and they do more calls.
Yeah, nice.
What else? They also did a catheter, like an in-out catheter, just to see if that was kind of holding it back. But as soon as all that had happened, like cannula come out straight away. There was no what ifs or like we'll just leave this in case kind of thing. It was trusting that process had happened and it was complete. Got up, went onto the lounge, and my midwife did like all the little checks on baby. And I forgot to mention. So that whole time where I had the syncopes, I remained, like the placenta was obviously still inside me. They remained, like Leo remained connected to me that whole time. There was
oh my gosh, that would never have happened.
No.
In a hospital ever.
And that was like the main thing. Like I wanted him to be connected to me like for as long as possible. And I also wanted to like get up and get back in the pool to get some photos with the placenta. And they made that all happen. It was no like, oh no, you've just fainted, we better like tiptoe around. It was like, that's fine, like let's get these photos, you're feeling good. Birth photographer took that, and then midwife did all the little checks on the baby, got on the lounge and did skin to skin, and that was us for the night.
Wow, that's such a beautiful story. And I think it's also, like I said, a really good example of like, you don't need to be in a hospital for those, I mean, I wouldn't say it's like an emergency procedure, but like, for those variations to happen, like midwives are trained to do those things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So,
and even then, like, you weren't scared or anything, hey, just because of, like, how the midwives were treating it. Like, it was...
Well, they don't turn up with nothing. They bring, like, an oxygen bottle. They bring a big bag of stuff. Like, everything's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just, like, I was sitting around the corner in our house, just, if it needed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. How do you feel like, obviously Leo's only a couple of months old and like first time parents, like I know that it like can be a bit full on, but how do you think, or how do you feel like this birth experience has influenced like your postpartum?
Like I loved my birth. Like I've said I would do it like heaps of times.
Heaps.
Yeah. And I didn't tear either during the birth.
Yeah.
I want to say that like maybe the prep for that helped, like the perineal massage. But yeah, like I think because of how everything happened so normally, like those first few days and weeks, like it didn't feel like a massive, like obviously it was massively life-changing and like totally new experience, but I feel like we were so well supported by a midwife. Like she come the next day in the afternoon, and then every day we were contacting, but she come, the next day, day 3 and day 7.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, texting, and like she would call me every day, and then she'd come at week 2, 4 and 6. Would answer any questions I had. Like breastfeeding has been a massive challenge for me. Leo's got like some ties in his mouth, like he's got a tongue tie and buccal ties. So that's like been a massive challenge. And we're like navigating that still. But like we've exclusively breastfed from the start. And I don't know, like, it's just massively life-changing. Like, and I am like so proud of myself, and I think women are amazing. And like I always did when I'd see birth, even with intervention, like women are still bloody incredible. But like I just have a new like sense of that now that I've done it myself. And like, even like respect for like women in the postpartum period. Like lots of our friends were bringing like meals to us, and that was just like so helpful. We actually had a week just Ryan, Leo and I at home, visitors, and I would recommend that to anyone. Like just lock up that bubble. Like it goes so quickly. And when you're trying to learn to breastfeed, and you know, just little things like their little cues on what they want. Like you don't want someone there watching you like a hawk, or like making a little comment, or are they hungry, or do they need the nappy change? Like let me figure it out. Like
absolutely. And I guess you know, I think lots of people have different experiences and opinions on like why the heck birth matters, but like I also have lots of thoughts on it. But like one of my thoughts is, you know, if you come away from birth feeling like you loved it, like it was amazing, it was empowering, you feel really strong, then like parenthood is tough. And learning how to breastfeed, helping baby learn how to breastfeed, that's all tough. So if you come into, you know, all of those new experiences kind of on a high from birth, I just feel like that is going to be so much more helpful than, you know, having had a lot of things happen that you didn't want to happen, and maybe it was a traumatic experience, and then now you've got a new baby, you've got a new life that you kind of have to put your own worries aside because you've got to like sustain this baby.
We didn't have to think about any of that. Like we weren't traumatized. Like everything happened as we planned it to, bar the little bit of, you know, variation with the placenta. It was, it definitely set us up for a relatively smooth postpartum. You know, obviously it can't be like heaps smooth. Like, I mean, I guess there's unicorns out there that like totally easy, but like, like I said, breastfeeding hasn't been easy for us. Even though I've watched heaps of people do it, it's nothing like doing it yourself.
I mean, kind of same. Like it wasn't until I was learning how to breastfeed, and I learned that one of my nipples is slightly smaller than the other.
Which
I was like,
it case for a lot of people.
when else are you going to learn that?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Jordan. Ryan and Jordan, did you have anything else that like we've missed or that you really wanted to say, or?
No, other than like I definitely would home birth again. And like I do try and slip it into other people's minds where I can, and I even think like one of my friends is definitely said she's going to do it next time after, you know, hearing my story. And another one's been looking into it. But yeah, like I definitely recommend people like educate themselves, and you know, like especially if you're going into the hospital system, like you just got to kind of be on the front foot, because things tend to roller coaster effect, like spiral, and if you know a little bit before you go in, at least you can make informed decisions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Ryan, does Ryan have any last words?
Yeah, definitely something I'd never considered doing, but now we've done it. It's a obvious, it's
a go-to.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
All right.